Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now this video is going to be a little bit different. It's a bit of an unscripted opinion piece for me, so hopefully it works well. Just bear with me. But basically this is going to be about the Chinese warships carrying out live fire drills off the Australian coast. Now they have since moved on and they have stopped doing their live fire drills, but there has been a lot of reaction from the government and the opposition and everything as to what's going on here. So I'm just going to start by talking about the reaction from the government. The reaction from the government has been fairly lackluster. Now, I'm not saying we need to blow these ships up, and that's clearly the wrong action, right? They're carrying out exercises, there's only so much you can really do at the end of the day. But the thing is, what we should have had was warning beforehand from China. First and foremost, it was China's job to tell us that there were going to be live fire exercises carried out before this. Second of all, we should have had information from the New Zealand Navy, which was keeping an eye on them with a frigate, to have actually told us that they were carrying out live fire tests before the New Zealanders did. Instead, the information that we received regarding the live fire test came from a Qantas pilot, which is completely unacceptable. There is no reason why we should be having a system like Five Eyes, Pine Gap, all these amazing intelligence networks that we're part of. If we cannot go, and if our allies cannot sit down and go, yes, the Chinese warship is firing live weaponry off our coast. It's just stupid. Albanese, from what I've seen, largely hadn't been told about this, and I believe was likely acting upon the assumption that we were told, basically whenever at the exact same time that Qantas pilot came in. Now that's not true, and again, it was the pilot who was the first to announce it. So since then, there has been a response from the government. Basically, the government was put in a complaint to China and stated that it was unacceptable that there was no time between. There was no announcement that this was going to happen. There was no warning. There was no warning time or prep time. So no one could close these lanes. No one could close down the air traffic and go, hey, look, guys, you have to avoid this area until they're finished firing. And that really is a big issue for me. But realistically, there is a bit more to it. Realistically, the government has been really against acting on this and really not wanting to make any real provocative measures. And I think it is fair enough. We shouldn't just be attacking whoever decides to carry out live fire drills off our coast, because, well, that's a bad form for starters. Second of all, it was an attempt from China to intimidate. The timing is just too well done. For example, just recently there was another situation with the P-8 Poseidon and a Chinese fighter jet, where the Chinese fighter jet moved in front, released flares, and acted in an aggressive, dangerous manner. We complained. China complained about us being there because it is clearly not within our international rights to be in a international shipping lane and monitoring it, because $1 trillion worth of trade goes through that area every year. But the thing is that fundamentally this should be encouraging and forcing the government to really have a rethink, because what was their approach? Well, Miles said that it wasn't a defense scenario or it wasn't a military scenario, so therefore we shouldn't avoid. Well, I've got a question. What classifies as a military scenario? What classifies as a defensive scenario? A missile landing in Canberra? A missile hitting Sydney? Or a bunch of guys out fishing or something getting hit by a shell or a stray shell? A boat, just, an accident where the Chinese fire an surface-to-air missile in a test, and the missile locks onto an airline or something? What classifies as a defense scenario? And that's the whole problem I have here. The thing is, there's a lack of definition. There's a lack of actual willingness to respond to anything. And that's the problem. We should have known the second there was a shell fired, the second there was a missile fired, the second there was a bullet fired. That should have been something we should have been made aware of. And New Zealand just didn't tell us. In addition, it's also a really bad look, Because, I mean, again, what classifies as a defensive scenario? You know, what if one day, Chinese warship comes down? This is hypothetical, so bear with me. But what if a Chinese warship comes down, sits off our coast, and fires a missile whilst a New Zealand warship is watching? And then that missile just merrily goes on its way and then hits a town or city in Australia. How do you say what is a defense scenario? How would they react? Would they fire interceptors to try and bring it down, or would they just assume that it's a training drill? Would they just assume that's an exercise? And this is the whole problem, is that when you treat everything as if it's only an exercise, as if it's only just a mundane occurrence, eventually something exceptional will happen and you will be caught out. This is why people do these like fire drills. It's why people do all that sort of stuff. It's why soldiers are trained in certain ways, because in the mundane, they shouldn't need that training. But when you actually need that training, it's often hard to bring it up. And the problem is that if we have this attitude of complacency, where everything that comes through is treated as big old friend, and there's no plausible risk at all, we need to understand that will in itself cause an inherent risk. And on top of that, I personally believe that Australia should be taking this as a very serious point. China is now capable of deploying warships off our coast. And at some point in the future, we're not going to be dealing with one or two ships. It will be a carrier battle group. It will be a larger force. It will be a large navy. And China is growing as a regional superpower and as a global superpower. And what we need to be doing is investing in air defenses, investing in defense systems along our coastline that we can hit potential adversaries' ships with as they go nearby. And we should be having taking these things much more seriously. Because the last thing you want is to just assume it's just a routine exercise and then they start hitting a city of yours. Because this is the thing, Australia has no air defense. We have one system that's somewhere in Australia. We don't actually have any idea where. And fundamentally, that in itself is just the weakness that we have. Australia needs to change a lot of things. And we need to look at our approach to China. And I don't say we need to... And what I need to make clear, I don't believe we should be making everything a knee-jerk reactionary to what China does, right? We shouldn't be just having this, oh my gosh, war, the second China puts a ship off our coast. But what we need to do is we need to start treating it with respect. We need to start treating these kind of situations with respect. Because, as we've seen with Ukraine, as we've seen across the world, when you give a dictator an inch, they'll take a mile. When you do anything, when you let the Chinese just sit around and do that, and again, and this is the thing, I'm not saying we need to intercept the Chinese, I'm not saying we need to harass them, I'm not saying we need to do anything unprofessional and stupid. What I'm saying is we need, one, a ship that will actually provide us with information and up-to-date intel. We don't need to know 5 hours later that the Chinese have fired a missile. We need to know then. That's when it's important. Second of all, we need a system that can defend ourselves should a ship become hostile. Should somebody become hostile. And that's a big deal. And since we're not doing that, it really just it re-raises the question, what is the government doing? And the issue is that we've had several decades now of incompetent, pacifistic governments who have no interest in actually defending Australia and want to just slot into this tiny task force made by America, when we don't realise that we actually need real capability and we need it now. That's all we've got for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. It really is appreciated. It really means a lot to me. That being said, I am going to try and work on more Australian military stuff. I've sort of finished up with my Does It Suck series for the time being. So hopefully that's understandable. But yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed. If you did, please again leave a like, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's really appreciated, and I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you very much. Goodbye.